I am sitting in my garage right now staring at the old Honda that has been with me for 10 years. Just got a text from my sister Sarah after 6 months of complete silence. Emergency. Need money for Emma's school trip. I smile bitterly, remembering the last time I actually believed my family needed me. Today marks exactly 1 year since I disappeared from their lives completely. Before I tell you what really happened that night, I want to know where my listeners are tuning in from tonight. Drop your city in the comments, hit that like button if you have ever felt invisible in your own family, and subscribe, because this story will show you exactly what happens when the person everyone takes for granted finally decides they have had enough. Let me take you back to when I was 32 years old, working at a financial firm in Denver, pulling in a steady $75,000 a year. Life seemed stable on the surface, but underneath I was drowning in responsibilities that were never supposed to be mine. My sister Sarah was 35, then a single mom raising my niece Emma, who had just turned 13. Sarah worked part-time at a local salon, barely scraping together enough hours to call it employment. Our parents had passed away when I was 25, and somehow I became the family's financial backbone, without anyone ever asking if I was okay with that arrangement. Every month, like clockwork, I paid Sarah's rent of $1,200 for her 2-bedroom apartment in a nice neighborhood across town. Her electric and water bills averaged around $200 monthly, which I covered without question. Her car insurance ran me $180 every month because her driving record was less than perfect. I maintained the family phone plan that cost $250 monthly for 4 lines, even though I only used 1. Sarah, Emma, and even Sarah's best friend Monica were all on my plan. Then there were the streaming services that somehow became my responsibility. Netflix, Spotify, Disney Plus, and Hulu totaled $65 monthly. Every week I transferred $400 into Sarah's account for groceries and household necessities. Her gas money alone cost me $300 monthly, because she drove everywhere, instead of taking public transportation. Emma and I used to share an incredibly close bond when she was younger. I was the fun aunt who showed up with surprise gifts and took her on weekend adventures to amusement parks and movies. Over the years, I had bought Emma everything a modern teenager could possibly want. Her iPhone 14 Pro Max cost me $850 last Christmas. The AirPods Pro were $249 for her birthday. Her iPad Air for school projects ran $599. I even purchased a MacBook Air for her homework that cost $999. Every month without fail, I handed Emma $200 in spending money, just because I wanted her to have the same opportunities as her friends. But over the past year, Emma had grown increasingly distant and cold toward me. When I visited their apartment, she barely looked up from whatever device I had bought her. She rolled her eyes when I tried to start conversations about school or her interests. When I suggested activities we could do together, she always had excuses about being too busy or too tired. Sarah constantly made excuses for Emma's behavior, insisting that all teenagers went through difficult phases and that Emma would eventually grow out of it. Sarah's 35th birthday was approaching in March, and I decided this would be the perfect opportunity to show my family how much they meant to me. I wanted to throw her the celebration she truly deserved, something memorable and special that would bring our family closer together. I spent weeks researching venues before booking a private dining room at the most elegant Italian restaurant downtown. The space could accommodate 30 people, and the total cost was $2,500, including tax and gratuity. I ordered a custom birthday cake from the most expensive bakery in Denver, a 3-tier chocolate masterpiece with hand-piped roses that cost $300. The Coach purse Sarah had been admiring every time we walked past the department store became her main gift, setting me back $650. I hired a professional photographer for $400 to capture every precious moment. Fresh flower arrangements and elegant decorations cost another $200. I was genuinely excited about this celebration. I imagined Sarah finally acknowledging all the sacrifices I had made for our family over the years. I pictured Emma hugging me and telling me I was the best aunt in the world. I fantasized about feeling truly appreciated and valued for once in my life. However, there had been warning signs that I chose to ignore in my desperation for family connection. I frequently overheard Sarah complaining about me during phone conversations with her friends. She would say things like how I was always trying to control their lives with my financial support, or how I made her feel guilty by constantly doing things for them. When I suggested family outings or holiday plans, Emma would immediately find reasons to avoid participating. During recent family gatherings, our relatives seemed genuinely warm with Sarah, but treated me like some kind of obligation they had to politely endure. I kept telling myself that they were just stressed about money, and that once Sarah's birthday celebration showed them how much I loved them, everything would return to the close relationship we used to share. The evening of March 15th arrived with perfect spring weather. Guests began arriving at the restaurant exactly as I had planned, filling the elegant private dining room with laughter and conversation. Sarah's friends from the salon came dressed in their finest clothes, excited for a night out. Her coworkers showed up carrying small gifts and wearing big smiles. Neighbors I had met maybe twice in passing were there enjoying the expensive dinner I was providing. Various relatives I barely knew had driven from different parts of Colorado to attend this celebration. The evening started smoothly enough. People were admiring the beautiful decorations and commenting on how delicious the food looked. The photographer moved discreetly around the room, capturing candid moments of joy and celebration. The custom cake drew gasps of appreciation when it was presented as the centerpiece. But something felt wrong from the very beginning. When Sarah introduced me to people, it was always just a casual, "This is my sister Camilla," with absolutely no mention of who had organized and paid for everything they were enjoying. When she opened the coach purse in front of everyone, Sarah acted surprised and said, "You really did not need to spend this much money on me," while her friends crowded around to admire it. Not a single person thanked me for the beautiful venue, the delicious catered meal, or the professional photography service documenting their evening. I kept waiting for some kind of acknowledgement that never materialized. I tried to blend in with different groups throughout the evening, but every conversation felt forced and uncomfortable. When I attempted to join the salon friends, they seemed to have endless inside jokes and barely included me in their discussions. The relatives asked polite questions about my job before quickly returning to family gossip about people I had never heard of. Even the neighbors showed more interest in talking to Sarah than getting to know me better. As the evening progressed, I began hearing comments that cut deeper than any knife could. Sarah told one of her friends, "Camilla does not have a family of her own, so she kind of clings to us for purpose." When someone asked about my career in finance, Sarah interrupted with, "She just sits behind a desk all day. Nothing too exciting or important." Every time I tried to take photographs with Emma, she would suddenly remember something urgent she needed to discuss with her friends, or excuse herself to the restroom. The photographer captured beautiful images of Sarah laughing with her friends, Emma posing with her school companions, and various relatives sharing animated conversations. But when I looked through the camera roll later, I realized I appeared in very few photos, and in the ones where I was present, I looked isolated and uncomfortable. I found myself sitting alone at one end of the long table, while everyone else clustered around Sarah at the opposite end. She was telling entertaining stories about her adventures as a single mother, and her audience was praising her strength and independence. One of Sarah's aunts said, "Sarah is such a remarkable woman for managing everything on her own, while still taking care of her sister." Many people would have given up on family obligations by now. The words hit me like a physical blow. Family obligations. That was how they saw me. Not as someone they loved or valued, but as a burden Sarah was graciously handling. I excused myself to the ladies' room and stared at my reflection in the ornate mirror. My face looked tired and sad despite the expensive makeup I had carefully applied hours earlier. I checked my banking app and saw that the $2,500 restaurant charge had already processed. I calculated quickly and realized I had spent $4,850 on this birthday celebration where I was being treated like an unwelcome stranger. When I returned to the dining room, I noticed that my absence had not interrupted any conversations or caused anyone to wonder where I had gone. The party had continued seamlessly without me, which somehow felt like the most painful realization of the entire evening. As dinner concluded, Sarah stood up to give a thank you speech to all the assembled guests. My heart lifted slightly, thinking this was finally the moment when she would acknowledge what I had done to make her special day possible. I watched hopefully as she looked around the room with genuine emotion in her voice. She thanked her friends for being such incredible support systems throughout all her challenges as a single mother. She thanked her co-workers for covering her shifts so she could have this evening off without worrying about lost income. She thanked the relatives for driving such long distances to celebrate with her and Emma. She thanked the neighbors for being like extended family and always looking out for them both. She never mentioned my name once during the entire speech. Not once. Emma was opening the final gift of the evening, which happened to be the iPhone 14 Pro Max I had carefully wrapped in silver paper that morning. As she lifted the pristine device from its white Apple box, her friend Madison leaned over to admire the latest technology. The photographer captured the moment as Emma's face lit up with genuine excitement for the first time all evening. That was when Emma giggled and said the words that would haunt me forever. "Mom says if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice." The entire table heard her clearly. All 30 guests erupted in laughter, thinking it was just innocent teenage humor about family dynamics. Sarah smiled indulgently and shook her head like Emma had said something adorably precocious. The photographer captured this moment too, with everyone laughing heartily except for me, sitting there with a smile frozen on my face like a mask. Time seemed to stop completely. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears while 29 people continued chuckling around me. The sound of their laughter felt like physical blows to my chest. Emma was still grinning, completely unaware that she had just shattered the last fragment of hope I had been desperately clinging to about our family relationship. I took a deep breath, looked directly at Emma, and said in a perfectly calm voice, "You know what, Emma? You might be absolutely right about that." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking application right there at the table in full view of everyone present. With 30 pairs of eyes watching curiously, I began systematically canceling every automatic payment I had set up for my sister's household over the past 7 years. First, I canceled the rent payment that was scheduled to process the following Tuesday. Then I stopped the car insurance autopay that renewed monthly. Next, I deleted the family phone plan that would expire at the end of the current billing cycle. I canceled every streaming service subscription with simple swipes of my finger. The electric and water bill autopays were permanently disabled. Even the weekly grocery money transfers were deleted from my recurring payments list. Sarah noticed my focused attention on my phone screen and asked with growing nervousness, "Camilla, what exactly are you doing over there?" Her voice carried a nervous edge, but she was still trying to maintain the cheerful party atmosphere for her guests. I looked up at her with complete serenity and replied, "Just making sure no one will notice when I disappear." The restaurant became eerily silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence as people began realizing something serious was happening. The photographer lowered his camera and stepped awkwardly away from our table. Emma's smile faded completely as she finally understood that her casual joke had consequences she had never imagined possible. Sarah tried desperately to laugh off the tension, saying, "Come on, Camilla, do not be so dramatic. Emma was just being a silly teenager." But I could see genuine panic starting to creep into her eyes as she watched me methodically destroying the financial safety net that had supported her lifestyle for 7 years. Emma looked genuinely frightened for the first time all evening and said, "Aunt Camilla, I was just kidding around. I did not mean anything by it." I stood up, slowly gathered my purse, and looked around the table one final time, at all these people who had enjoyed my generosity while treating me like I was invisible. "The entire party is already paid for, so please continue enjoying Sarah's birthday celebration." I walked steadily toward the restaurant exit without looking back, even though I could hear Sarah calling my name with increasing desperation behind me. That night, I went home to my apartment and packed only what I could fit into one black backpack. I took my passport, birth certificate, and other essential documents. My laptop went in along with its charger. I packed exactly 3 changes of clothes and my most comfortable pair of shoes. Everything else I left behind. I wrote one brief note that said, "You were right. No one will notice. The backpack has everything you need to know." Inside that backpack, I left every receipt, bank statement, and payment confirmation from the past 7 years, showing exactly how much money I had spent supporting Sarah and Emma. I included the lease termination notice for my apartment, which I had already paid in full through the end of the month. At the very bottom, I placed a handwritten note that read, "Total amount spent on your family over 7 years, $847,000. I hope it was worth it." I drove through the night to Portland, Oregon, a city I had visited once during a work conference, and fallen in love with immediately. Using cash I had saved in a separate emergency account, I rented a small studio apartment on a month-to-month lease in a quiet neighborhood near downtown. Within 2 weeks, I had landed a position at an innovative tech startup that offered me a salary increase of $15,000 over my previous job. The first month was incredibly challenging emotionally. I questioned my decision, constantly wondering if I had overreacted to what might have been just a thoughtless comment from a teenager. I felt guilty for abandoning my family so abruptly, without giving them a chance to apologize or change their behavior. But slowly, I began to notice something remarkable. For the first time in 7 years, I was not constantly worried about anyone else's bills, problems, or immediate needs. I started attending evening yoga classes at a welcoming studio just 6 blocks from my apartment. I enrolled in weekend cooking lessons because I had always wanted to learn proper culinary techniques beyond basic survival meals. I bought actual books instead of just reading financial reports, and began devouring novels during my free time. I started exploring Portland's famous hiking trails on weekends, instead of spending my days off running errands and solving problems for Sarah and Emma. Meanwhile, back in Denver, my family was experiencing their first taste of financial reality, without their safety net. During the first week after I left, Sarah called my disconnected phone number, obsessively leaving increasingly frantic voicemails that started angry and became progressively more desperate. She was absolutely convinced I would return home once I had cooled down from the birthday party incident. By the second week, the bills started arriving with alarming regularity. Sarah called my work number crying when she realized she owed $1,200 in rent, plus substantial late fees. Emma's phone service was discontinued when the family plan expired, cutting off her connection to social media and friends. Sarah had to sell the Coach purse I had given her just to buy groceries for the week. They were forced to move out of their comfortable 2-bedroom apartment and relocate to a much smaller place in a less desirable neighborhood. After 1 month of struggling, Sarah managed to find my email address and sent me a lengthy message apologizing profusely for everything that had happened. She promised that both she and Emma had learned valuable lessons about taking me for granted. She begged me to come home and said they would treat me with the respect and appreciation I deserved. She claimed they had both realized how much I truly meant to their family. I read her email twice, but I never responded. During my second month in Portland, I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Rebecca Martinez, who specialized in family dynamics and codependent relationships. Through our weekly sessions, I began to understand why I had allowed myself to be treated so poorly for so many years. I realized I had confused being financially needed with being genuinely loved. I had mistakenly believed that if I made myself absolutely indispensable to my family, they would have no choice but to appreciate and value me as a person. My healing process accelerated when I met Jessica, a talented software designer at my new company, who invited me to lunch during my third week. Jessica actually listened when I talked about my interests and opinions. She never asked me for money favors or solutions to her problems. She remembered details about my life and checked on me when I seemed stressed about work projects. For the first time in many years, I experienced what a truly balanced friendship felt like. Through therapy and my growing friendship with Jessica, I learned essential skills like setting healthy boundaries and saying no when people asked for things I was not comfortable providing. I practiced putting my own emotional and financial needs first, instead of automatically sacrificing everything for others. Most importantly, I learned to recognize the crucial difference between people who cared about me as a human being and people who only valued what I could provide for them. 6 months after leaving Denver, I came to a painful but liberating realization: Sarah and Emma had never actually loved me as a person. They had loved my bank account, my generosity, and my willingness to solve all their problems without expecting anything in return. The moment I removed my financial support, they had zero interest in maintaining any kind of relationship with me based on genuine affection, shared memories, or family bonds. A full year has now passed since that devastating birthday party, and I have built a life in Portland that brings me authentic happiness and peace. I have been promoted twice at my job, and am respected by my colleagues for my analytical skills and innovative ideas. I have developed a close circle of friends who value my company regardless of what I can do for them financially. I have learned to genuinely enjoy my own company and pursue hobbies that fulfill me personally, rather than just serving others. This morning's text message from Sarah asking for money for Emma's school trip made me smile, rather than feel the familiar stab of guilt. I deleted the message without responding, because I finally understand that their financial problems are not my responsibility to solve. They had 7 full years to show me love, appreciation, and basic respect, and they consistently chose to take me for granted instead. The greatest lesson I learned from disappearing is this fundamental truth: your worth as a human being is not measured by how much you sacrifice for others, but by how much you respect and value yourself. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is remove yourself completely from situations where you are not valued or appreciated. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from people who see you as an obligation rather than a blessing. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is your absence. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away. Have you ever felt completely invisible in your own family or friend group? Have you found yourself constantly giving to people who never give anything back to you? I want to hear your stories in the comments below, because you are not alone in this experience. Hit that like button if this story resonated with your own experiences of feeling unappreciated by the people closest to you. Subscribe for more stories about finding the inner strength to put yourself first when others take you for granted. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they deserve so much better treatment from the people in their lives. Thank you for listening to my story tonight, and I sincerely hope it gives you the courage to value yourself the way you truly deserve to be valued. Remember, you are worth so much more than what you can provide for other people.